I ended up having a shoulder surgery out of different yoga injuries that I had. And so that definitely played a huge role in my desire to educate myself and get the knowledge that I need to not only serve myself, but also students and help others as well. And I think that's always been a goal of mine as a physical therapist who was previously a yoga teacher, is how do I help educate other yoga teachers, other movement professionals, whether that's, Pilates or personal trainers, on anatomy and physiology and what is healthy for our bodies to be going through.
Welcome to Full-Time Yoga Teacher Podcast. My name is Rekha and I am your host. If you are a returning listener, thank you so much for coming back and tuning in this week. And if you are a new listener, I want to say welcome. Welcome to Full-Time Yoga Teacher Podcast. This is a podcast where I interview different full-time yoga teachers from across the world to share their passion, their journey, their challenges that they have overcome to be a full-time yoga teachers. And if you have been listening to this podcast long enough, you know that I don't always interview full-time yoga teachers because I really want to highlight all kinds of stories and journeys that I think we can all learn from or get inspired by. This week's interview, I am interviewing AJ, who is not a full-time yoga teacher. So I think it'll be really fun conversation for you to listen to. AJ is a full-time physical therapist who used to be a full-time yoga teacher in New York City. So I was so curious to talk to AJ about what made them decide to pursue physical therapy, what made them feel like they wanted something different than being a full-time yoga teacher, what inspired them to be a full-time physical therapist instead of full-time yoga teacher. So these are all kinds of questions that I got to talk to AJ about. And some of you may know that I have a huge interest in the career of physical therapy. I'm not sure if I want to become a physical therapist just because it takes so long. If I do want to go back to school, I would have to probably do 2 to 3 years of prerequisite and then apply for PT school to see if I can even get in. And if I do get in, I think that it's another 2 to 3 more years before I become a PT. And that's a lot of money. I would have to get a lot of student loans and get in debt to become a PT. And I'm not sure I want to invest that much time, money, and effort. But I'm just still super interested in physical therapy work. And that is why I recently started shadowing at a local Long Beach PT office. I started shadowing a physical therapist here in Long Beach locally, and that's been really fun for me. I love learning from PT. I took a continuing education training programs called 3's Physio Yoga. And that was also a training program created by physical therapists who are yoga teachers, and they wanted to share the PT knowledge to yoga teachers to help yoga teachers teach more specifically private yoga in a more skillful way. And that training was really fun for me. And I just love learning about body and human movements and patterns that exist and how that can lead to possible pain and challenges, but how that can also lead to living more with ease. So body has always been such a fascinating thing for me to learn. So all that to say, that is why I'm so excited to have AJ to come on this week's podcast episode. AJ has been a guest teacher on my mentorship program for yoga teachers in the past. AJ taught a workshop on lower back pain, and recently AJ came and taught a workshop on teaching yoga to aging population. And AJ's calling their workshop series or training series Yoga Meets Physical Therapy. And I think AJ brings such an amazing perspective because in the interview, I also mentioned this, but AJ used to be a full-time yoga teacher and now is a full-time PT. And now AJ works in PT world mostly, but also at a teacher training program locally here in Long Beach, or come be a guest teacher on my mentorship program. So I just love that they understand two worlds of yoga teacher and PT, and AJ is able to kind of bridge the gap between the two. So AJ is such an amazing resources for us here in Long Beach. But like I said, you can always join any of the workshop that AJ comes on as a guest teacher to teach via live stream on Zoom if you don't live in Long Beach area, or you can even watch the recording of it. So I highly, highly encourage you to continue learning from AJ whenever AJ can come on and teach us some kind of workshop. And AJ is coming to teach a workshop in early November called Hypermobility in Yoga. And I'm very excited that I get to learn more about hypermobility. And in this conversation, they talk about how this topic is so personal to them because AJ themselves have hypermobile body, and because of that have endured some injuries from practicing yoga, and that kind of led them to want to become a physical therapist. So it's a really cool story that they share, and I hope you enjoy this conversation I had with AJ. Keep your eyes and ears open for November workshop that AJ is going to be coming on to teach for my mentorship program for teaching yoga for hypermobile bodies. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy this conversation, and I will speak to you on the other side. Welcome, AJ, to Full-Time Yoga Teacher Podcast. And I'm just so excited to have this conversation with you. But please, before I start asking so many questions, please tell the listeners, where are you joining this conversation from today? And also, where are you originally from?
So I am here in Long Beach, California, where I'm a full-time resident. I've lived here now for 7 years. Prior to that, I spent 2.5 years up in LA. And then before that, I lived in New York City for 7 years. And originally, I am from Wisconsin, near Milwaukee.
So you're originally from the East Coast area?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I guess maybe I want to hear what brought you to West Coast, but maybe we can start with when did you first get introduced to yoga? And do you remember the moment or a period where you realized that you wanted to become a yoga teacher?
Yeah, absolutely. So my first experience with yoga was actually as a teenager. I grew up doing dance. I did ballet, tap, and jazz from age 4 till 18. My dance studio offered a yoga for dancers class. It wasn't necessarily a yoga class, I would say. It was more of a get more flexible as a dancer kind of class.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed it. I would take it every week and I loved it. And then later, when I moved to New York, I was very lucky to live. Well, I went to NYU for my undergrad, and I lived very close to a studio on St. Mark's Place that was donation based. And so as a student, because it was donation based, I was able to attend yoga classes virtually daily.
Mm-hmm.
I initially started going to those yoga classes because I had broken my foot. I was supposed to be a track athlete at NYU. I pole vaulted, and I ended up in the preseason breaking my foot, and so I was unable to continue with track. But then, as kind of my rehab, I started going to yoga every day. And I found it to be really, not only was it helping me rehab my foot, but it was also helping to just calm my mind, calm my body, and kind of feeding my body in a way that felt good and helpful, especially as a prior athlete, needing to move my body on a regular basis. So it felt good. And so that's kind of where my yoga journey started.
Well, I have a lot of questions. First of all, I didn't know you were a track athlete. That's amazing. And how did you transition from dance to track?
So I was actually a kind of multi-sport athlete growing up. So growing up, I danced, I played basketball, and I ran track. And those, I would say, were my maybe 3 main sports. I, of course, played recreation soccer and softball and stuff here and there. But I have just always loved movement and moving my whole entire life. And to this day, man, if I can't move for a day or two, I feel like I'm gonna lose my mind. So
I'm the same way.
yeah.
Very much the same way. Okay, so you had interest in dancing and also you said basketball and track, which is really cool because a lot of people I interview, I feel like a lot of yoga teachers come from dance background or sometimes
Yeah.
gymnastic background.
Yeah.
And then there are other like category of teachers that come from sports background. And I kind of come from sports. I played basketball too.
Cool.
But it's nice that you came from both. Like you
Yeah.
have both of those experience. Yeah. And then tell me, you said you were doing, what were you doing in track? I don't know which one. What
I was
is
a
it?
pole vaulter.
What is
So
that?
like where you like run with the really big stick and you poke it in the ground and then you launch
Oh
yourself up in
my
the air.
God. That one always looked so like I always wanted to try that. It looked
Yes.
so cool. Like you're like almost flying up in the air, you know? Wow. Okay, so that led you to injury, like foot injury.
Yeah, so I would actually in the off season, I would go do conditioning with the gymnastics team
Mhm.
wherever I was. Even back in high school, I would go work out with the gymnastics team. It's a very comparable skill set
Uh-huh.
to pole vaulting.
Oh.
And so one day I was at gymnastics and messing around on a trampoline, doing things that I shouldn't have done, and I broke my foot.
So
Yes.
you said it's like comparable kind of the exercise or the practice can benefit the
Yeah,
gymnastic can benefit the track or that pole
that
vaulting.
pole vaulting. Yeah, it's a very similar skill set in like muscle groups that you have to use. So
Right.
very upper body focus. You need a lot of grip strength. Lats are huge. Your core is huge, and then also just
What?
having that kind of in air awareness that a
Mm-hmm.
gymnast has, like the ability to kind of orient yourself in space when you're upside down and 10 feet off the ground. Like, how do you kind of orient yourself? And so, pole vaulting and gymnastics are very kind of similar skill set. And it's kind of funny
Interesting.
because actually, now one of my favorite hobbies that I have picked up is rock climbing. And rock
Mm-hmm.
climbing too is a very kind of similar skill set, very, upper body grip strength. You
Yeah.
have to be able to orient yourself in kind of weird positions and
Yeah.
problem solve. And so it's kind of is very similar, which
Yeah,
I love. Yeah.
I was just thinking that when you said like a grip strength and core and the
Yeah.
lats, I'm like, sounds like rock
Rock
climbing.
climbing. Exactly.
Okay, so did it become clear for you that like track or the pole vaulting is something you enjoy the most or you were good at that like pushed you to because you were doing so many other activities in sports too. So was that it at some point became clear that that's the one you wanted to pursue for
Yeah.
college?
Yes, I loved basketball. I think basketball was kind of my first real love of a sport, but I think for me growing up there was a lot of kind of politics
Mm,
involved in my community and the clubs that I was playing in, and it just was after a while wasn't fun anymore because it
mm,
your playing time depended on who you knew and who your dad
mm.
was and who the coach was, and it started to get really tainted in a not so fun way. And so
Yeah.
um for me in high school, track was really uh an area where I felt like it didn't matter who was who, and if you're if you pole vaulted the highest and you ran the fastest, there's no question
Yeah.
we have to pick you.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter who your dad was and who the coach
Mm.
liked the most. The numbers were the numbers, and so that kind of is where I fit in, I think. Yeah.
Did you get a scholarship to play for NYU?
No, no. So I actually I was going to NYU for theater and acting, and
Mhm.
that's the ultimate kind of reason that I wanted to go to NYU. So I had auditioned and got accepted into NYU for theater and acting. And then I was looking up on the track website at NYU to see, what does their track team look like? And
Mhm.
I realized that I could pole vault just as good as anybody else who is at NYU. So I
Yeah.
emailed the track coach and he said, "Come on in. Well, we'd love
Uh,
to have you. So
oh my God. See, I'm learning so much about you. I didn't know you were acting major as well. Wow.
totally. Totally.
Okay, so you injured your ankle, which kind of set you off to kind of start diving into yoga more and
Yeah.
realizing the benefit of yoga. Did you ever wanted to go back to track after your ankle healed or your foot healed?
Not necessarily. I love still to this day, I love running
Mm,
and I've gotten into things like rock climbing, but I think after injuring my ankle, and I was there at NYU to do acting and theater, and it just sort of was like, maybe this isn't what I should be focusing on, and I wanna get the most out of my education there, and I don't need to be a pole vaulter to be fulfilled in what I'm doing with my life right
mhm,
now.
mhm. Yeah.
But I would
And
man, I think about it all the time. I would love to
really?
I'm like, let me and now especially since I rock climb all the time, I'm like, I think
Yeah.
I could probably pole vault better than I did when I was in high school. So, I'm like, if anyone knows anyone who wants to let me pole vault, let me know.
Yeah. Well, so tell me what happened after, I guess, like going through school, maybe graduating with acting major, or continuing to practice yoga. When did your first teacher training come in place?
Sure. Did so it was right my first year at NYU where I broke my foot. And so by maybe December, January of that year, I was going to yoga every single day basically. And I went to yoga every day for probably a year. And the summer after my second year of college, they were offering a teacher training at the studio that I was at.
Mhm,
And I thought, great, this is perfect. I will be an actor and then I will teach yoga on the side as kind of my day job. And so
mhm.
I signed up for the yoga teacher training and I fell in love. I mean, it was incredible and I'm so grateful that I was able to do that and it feels like a million years ago. That was in 2010 at this point.
So you were still a college student when you
Yes.
did the teacher training in the summertime. Okay, so you were going back to school again, but did you start teaching right away? Did you start teaching a couple classes?
Yeah, the studio that I was involved with was called Yoga to the People. And I don't know
Mm,
if you've heard of much about them, but there's been some significant controversy and
yeah.
legal issues over the last couple years.
That's a donation-based studio.
Yes, it was a donation. They're no longer open. It was a donation-based studio. There's just a lot of the owner
Mhm,
is and I stopped following along, but he was
mhm,
basically under arrest for tax evasion and stuff because they were receiving cash donations and not paying any
mhm,
taxes and whatnot. And there was also a lot of kind of abusive, emotionally,
mhm,
physically kind of stuff going on at the
mhm,
studio. But
mhm,
that aside, and I think that's where it's hard for me because it was such at the time was such an
mhm,
incredible experience and just consuming in a way that nothing had ever been consuming before.
mhm,
And it felt good at the time.
mhm,
Now looking back, I actually sort of realized that it was not an appropriate situation in a lot of contexts. They over abused free labor significantly.
mm, yeah.
So, their policy was finish the 200-hour teacher training and
Mhm,
then teach 25 classes for free. And then after you teach 25 classes for free, then you can be on their payroll and get paid to teach. And in order to teach those 25 classes for free, you have to be showing up to the studio every single day and
yeah,
taking classes and helping clean the studio and
yeah.
put things away and greet new students and help organize different things and clean up things. So I was there every day. I took probably 2 to 3 classes a day. I was helping
Mhm,
everything, they were offered me basically one class a week to teach. So it took 25 weeks, which was like virtually 6
Yeah.
months to teach for free.
Yeah.
And then I heard nothing after I taught
Uh-huh.
those 25 classes.
Uh-huh.
So they kind of just dropped me off after that. So essentially, they had 6 months of free labor from me, and then I heard nothing.
Mm.
And I was 20 years old at the time, so I had,
Yeah.
very little understanding of
Yeah.
literally anything. And it was a really sad, kind of dark time because it was the most important, incredible thing that I had done in my life up
Mhm.
until that point.
Mhm.
But I guess luckily I had some other friends from my teacher training who were either experiencing something similar or just knew right off the bat, like, this is not the studio for me. Like, I
Yeah.
just did my 200-hour training and now I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And so those other friends kind of encouraged me to come take other classes at other
Mhm.
studios with them and really helped me branch out. And
Mhm.
I started working mostly front desk jobs at different yoga studios, but that kind of allowed me to get into teaching group classes as well as private classes. I would say the majority of my clients and my income while I was a full-time kind of yoga teacher in New York City was from private clients.
So that kind of led through like you graduated your college and started working
Yeah.
full time as a
Yeah. And it was kind of by the time I had graduated college, I was just full on yoga. I was like, I don't even think I need to audition for any acting roles or anything. Like this is the most fun I've had and the most sense of community that I've had in my whole life, and I wanna do this instead. And
Mm,
so I sort of pursued yoga rather than acting at that point.
yeah. So after you graduated, you were just pursuing full time teaching. Did you have other jobs besides? I know you said you work sometimes
Yeah,
front desk.
I, because and I'm sure you know this too, but yoga is sometimes you have a gazillion clients and classes, and sometimes you have, like, 1 class a week or 1 client a week. So I was kind of bouncing in and out of a lot of different things. I I worked occasionally at a front desk at a yoga studio, on the Upper West Side, as well as I did some personal assisting and, like, babysitting here and there for a
Mhm.
children's book author that I knew, as well
Nice.
as I part-time occasionally would help out with a front desk and billing at a chiropractor clinic as well. So kinda just odd jobs of
Yeah.
different
And
things.
at that time in New York City, was it doable? Like you were able to make your living from teaching and odd jobs here and there and
Yeah. It
other full-time yoga teachers that were doing it too.
yeah, gosh, I feel like, man, those were the days, like, it was, 2011, 2012, and
Yeah.
yeah, I had a bedroom in a very tiny apartment, and my rent, I would say, was, like, I don't know, anywhere from 1,000 to, like, $1,100 a month. And between a bunch of odd jobs, I was able
Yeah.
to, you know, pay my rent and have some good fun too. I mean, I was in my early 20s in New York City. I had a pretty great
Yeah.
time.
And you had your own apartment. You didn't
I had yeah, I shared.
okay. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I had roommates
Uh-huh.
and stuff. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Wow. So and you said like private clients, was
yeah,
a lot of
yeah.
the
I would say, I mean, the private client thing was what really like put me above financially where
Mhm.
I ever imagined being. I mean, the part-time work here and there was helpful and made me feel comfortable that, like, I would always be able to pay my bills,
Mhm.
but having those private clients really took me to a place where I felt like I'm thriving. And
Mm.
it gave me just that extra little comfortable piece financially to
Wow.
do almost anything that I wanted to do.
Yeah. And how long were you living as a full-time yoga teacher in New York?
Let's see, I did that. So probably from 2010, 2011, until I moved out here in 2015.
Mm,
So probably about 5 years I did that in New York, before I moved to LA.
okay.
And the pursuit of, like, physical therapy was sort of why I moved to LA, and so my gears shifted a little bit once I got to LA.
Okay. So the pursuit of physical therapy is what led you to West Coast. So I want to know, like, why? Like, what happened? Maybe it
Totally.
wasn't just like one drastic moment, it's like over
Yeah.
time, but like what is it about physical therapy that, that you became really interested in and you really decided like, I'm going back to school for this?
Yeah. So I sort of feel like I had no idea what I was getting myself into when I started off, but, one of the other women that I worked at the front desk with
Right.
at the yoga studio in New York, she was at Columbia for PT school at the time in New York City, and she would just talk to me about what she was learning about and
Mhm.
different injuries and different anatomy kinda things that fit in with yoga, and I think she saw how interested I was in it, and she said, "I should do that too." And I was like, "Huh, maybe I should do that too."
Uh-huh.
So I started kind of figuring out what that looks like.
Mhm.
I had no idea.
Mhm.
I kind of thought I could just, like, sign up for PT school
Mhm.
and jump right in, which is absolutely not the case. Going to PT school is absolutely crazy, and I don't know if I can totally recommend it to people. Once you, like, become a PT and it's great, but the
Uh-huh.
whole process of getting into PT school is insane. It's
Really?
almost like going to medical school. You have to take essentially all the same prerequisites as a
Mhm.
medical student would take. So you're taking biochemistry, physics, anatomy, physiology,
Mhm.
and then you have to apply to PT school on top
Mhm.
of that, and it's very competitive. And so while I was in New York, I was trying to figure out how do I take classes, and being an acting major, I didn't take a single science class at all, like, period. I think sociology counted as my science credit in acting. So, let alone, like, biology or calculus,
Yeah.
I was doomed. So, I started and, because that friend was at Columbia, I was like, "Let me go to Columbia."
Yeah.
Huge mistake. I started taking some of my classes at Columbia, um, terribly expensive. I didn't realize going to NYU, I had a lot of financial aid because
Yeah.
you get financial aid for undergraduate degrees. Once you are graduated, you can't take out more or you can't get financial aid for additional classes,
Yeah.
bachelor level classes, that is.
Yeah.
So suddenly I was like paying full price at Columbia, and I was also mixed in with 18-year-old undergraduate students who had taken like AP chemistry a couple months ago, and I was not prepared, to say the least. So I had maybe over the last like 2 to 3 years prior, many of my friends had moved out to the West Coast,
Mhm.
both San Francisco and Southern California kinda
Mhm.
areas, and I was just starting to look, and I saw how incredible the community college programs were here, as well
Mhm.
as the UCs have extension programs where you can take the same kind of college classes at a
Mhm.
much reduced cost as well as in the evenings.
Mhm.
So I decided to move to LA,
Mhm.
and I went to UCLA Extension in the
Mhm.
evenings as well as I took a few classes at Santa Monica College.
Mhm.
And I had to, for 3 years, take biochemistry, physics, calculus, and it was
To
really,
even
really,
get
really hard.
those are the classes you just had to take to even before applying to PT
Yes.
school.
Yes, just to apply to PT school.
And that took how many years for you?
That took me about 3 years.
And, at that point, you're like really deep in it. Like, what is it? Like, what was the drive behind it? Like, from being a full-time yoga teacher, like, what was that drive, motivation to be like, I'm gonna, dedicate,
Yeah,
go back to school, or even move, and, 'cause that's a lot of commitment. So, like, what was
it
the
is.
drive behind
It
that?
is. I think honestly, half of it was I had no idea what I had gotten myself into. I just thought, "I'm gonna take a few classes and then we'll be done."
Yeah.
And I really it was just naive and blind, just thought it would be quicker.
Mhm.
The other piece is, as a kind of freelance yoga teacher and someone who's working, a couple different odd jobs here and there, at 25 years old was totally cool and fun and exciting and exactly what I wanted to do in New York City.
Mhm.
But I started to think, down the line, I don't have health insurance and I don't have a retirement fund and I don't have any sense of stability. Some months I would have a lot of money and some months I would have just enough money. And I wanted to have a little bit better sense of stability.
Mhm.
So I felt like going to physical therapy school and becoming a physical therapist would give me the opportunity to have a little bit more stability and work a kind of full-time job at one
Mhm.
location and have those benefits and be a real adult.
Mhm. Mhm. And was there any part of like, is there any like dissatisfaction with like not, I totally get the whole like maybe stability and security that comes with through and becoming a PT. But was there anything that was like that you felt like there was something missing in the knowledge of what you had, like the knowledge you had as a
Yes.
teacher in terms of the human body and how much you could help your students, and you felt like you needed to learn more to be able to do better serve your students?
Yes, 100%. Many, many students would come to me asking about injuries, and I had no idea, and I didn't feel comfortable trying to fix their injuries,
Okay.
as well as I saw many of my yoga teacher friends kind of taking those students' questions and trying to fix their injuries, and I was like, "What are you doing? You
Yeah.
don't know anything, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
literally, who are you to
Yeah.
offer advice on somebody's injury when you literally have a, you know, maybe you have a 500-hour teacher training done, but that's it." Like, I don't know, it was shocking to me, as well as, and I think that's changing now. I mean, I think that, 15 years ago, the yoga community took more liberties with their practice and what they felt like was appropriate for their students, and I think now we know a little bit better,
Mhm.
or at least I hope so.
Mhm.
But also, I myself was getting hurt doing yoga too.
Mm.
As a yoga teacher and a practitioner, I was constantly struggling with different injuries, and so much so that well, now knowing what I know as a physical therapist, I don't know that I
Mhm.
necessarily needed surgery on my shoulder, but at the time I was convinced that surgery was the only thing that was going to fix my shoulder, and I ended up
Mm.
having a shoulder surgery out of different yoga injuries that I had, and so that definitely played a huge role in my desire to educate myself and get the knowledge that I need to not only serve myself, but also
Mhm.
students and help others as well. And
Yeah.
I think that's always been a goal of mine as a physical therapist who was previously a yoga teacher, is how do I help educate other yoga teachers, other movement professionals, whether
Mm.
that's, Pilates or personal trainers, on
Mm.
anatomy and physiology and what is healthy for our bodies to be going through.
Yeah. Oh my God. I have so many questions.
Yes, yes, yes,
But
yes.
I think I want to put a pin on the injuries that you said that you were getting from yoga and then addressing that. I think I'm going to put a pin on it and maybe we can circle back around. But was that your motivation when you're going into PT schools or starting to take those classes to apply for PT school? Did you have in your mind that I want to become a PT, step away from this full-time yoga teaching job path, but eventually I do want to come back and teach yoga teachers and movement professionals about what I learned? What that is that does that come later, or did you already kind of have that
No,
idea?
I think that was actually the initial thought was I would graduate PT school and then I would go be a yoga teacher who also has this incredible skill set
Mm.
to help educate teachers and whatnot. And actually, I think that I found through my experience working as an in a PT clinic, as well as
Mhm.
eventually when I did get into PT school and following my clinical internships during PT school, I loved PT and I
Mhm.
love being a physical therapist and what
Yeah.
that means. And I do think, in the future, I don't necessarily love teaching group classes, but I do enjoy teaching private sessions as well as I do very, very much enjoy teaching teachers. So that is kind of what future me wants to do more of is,
Yeah.
if there was some magical way I could have health care
Mhm.
and not work full time, I would love to, in an ideal world, be part time PT, part time teaching on teacher trainings or workshops for teachers. And that would be my dream life.
You definitely want to kind of get back to your point of what you said about wanting to teach more teachers. And I'm also curious to ask about like what made you not be interested in teaching group classes. But before that, let's go back to your journey. So you moved to California, you were going to school, or you're taking classes to apply for PT. Through that few years, you were you still teaching yoga as your part-time job while you're in school trying to apply to a PT school?
Yeah, here and there a little bit. I taught at a very small yoga studio in Venice Beach for a little while, as well as I did teach several private clients here and there part time. But predominantly, I was working nearly full time as a physical therapy aide in a PT clinic,
Mm-hmm.
which also in California is a paid position. When I was living in New York,
Mm-hmm.
that is not very, like, less common, I would say, in PT practices in New York City. I don't know if that's just across the East Coast or in New York. Each state has different laws, as far as who is able to work in a PT clinic and a PT setting and work with different patients. And so I think California is much more open to having aid help. So I was able to get paid to have hours for a physical therapy clinic, which in order
Mm-hmm.
to apply to PT school, I had to have a number of hours observing a physical therapy clinic. So it was kind of a win-win for me to
Yeah.
work there. And that's kind of where I put my focus moving to LA. I think it was as far as like teaching yoga, moving from like one city to another city, it was definitely a challenge.
Yeah.
In New York, I knew so many people, and I felt like
Mhm.
almost any yoga studio in New York City I could have gone into and had at least a friend of a friend who, like, worked there and, like, gotten
Mhm.
an interview or an audition to teach, whereas in LA, it was, like, brand new, and it was definitely a challenge to find studios that were willing to even just, like, audition. I think it's, and probably as you know, like, many studios, the purpose of their teacher trainings is to recruit more teachers for them who are teaching in their style.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really challenging to break into a new city, if you're just like fresh and don't know many people.
It's very true. Yeah, I agree. Okay, so you then eventually finished all the requirement, applied for PT school and got in? Was it like was it a
Yeah.
first try you got in or was it
Yeah.
Okay.
It was very lucky first try. I mean, I busted my ass in my prerequisite classes. Mm, man, I knew that this is what I wanted to do, and I knew that I needed, like I said, getting into PT school is super competitive. I needed a super high GPA, so I did any and everything to get the best grades that I could.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, Long Beach State, California University, Long Beach State, CSULB, the early acceptance into their
Mm-hmm.
PT program.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to apply like within a month of the application opening. And basically, you're in applying early, you're committing to going to that school. So even
Mm-hmm.
if you apply to other schools and get into other schools, you have
Mm.
committed to going to Long Beach State if they accept you.
Yeah.
So that's what I did.
Uh-huh.
And they accepted me within a couple weeks. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was like, woohoo, I did it.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to apply anywhere else, which was awesome.
Huh?
I don't think they offer that anymore, which is
Yeah.
too bad because I mean, that was, I think it gave me definitely an advantage. I mean, they're looking at you amongst like, I don't know, a couple people who were able to get their application together,
Mm-hmm.
versus like the normal application cycle. They're probably looking at close to like 5,000 applications. And so I think it definitely gave me a leg up.
Yeah.
Um,
No.
but yeah,
Congratulations. I
thank
know
you.
it's not easy. So like it sounds like you really, really put in so much work to be there and you got in. And after you got in, how many years of PT school is it? And were you kind of like slowly pulling away from teaching yoga as you got more and more busy with PT school?
Yeah, so physical therapy school for the most part is 3 years. At Cal State Long Beach, it is 3 years. Most schools are 3 years. There are a few schools over the last couple of years that are doing like a 2.5, 2-year program. I honestly don't know how they're doing that because
Mhm.
it felt like every second of my education was crammed packed full of
Mhm.
stuff.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was really challenging to work and go to PT school. Most everyone that I was in school with in my cohort
Mhm.
did not maintain any part-time job during PT school. It is nearly impossible. You're Monday through Friday in class a lot of times from 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. I mean, you do have some breaks throughout the day, here and there, but, and you have tests almost every day there is a quiz or a test that you're taking. It's yeah, it's extremely rigorous, and if you're not studying, you're probably missing something
Mm. Mhm. Well,
every
how do you
moment of the day.
survive? How are the students surviving? Are they like, do they have loans, grants?
Yeah,
Are they staying with their parents? Like, how are they
yes,
living?
all of the above.
Okay.
Yeah, so you take out loans, you live with parents, you hopefully, I mean, luckily for me, I worked a lot, you
Mhm.
know, I didn't start PT school until I was 28, so
Mhm.
from basically 21 to 28, I was working.
Mhm.
Um, I didn't save up too much money, but I had enough, and
Mhm.
going to a state school um, was significantly cheaper than going to a private school.
Yeah.
Something like USC costs like, I don't even know, probably close to $100,000 a year for 3 years.
Yeah.
Whereas Long Beach State, it was like 15,000 a year for 3 years, so
Yeah. Yeah.
much more affordable,
Yeah.
and also living in Long Beach was much more affordable than living in
Mhm.
LA as well, so definitely that was a huge consideration that I was making as well.
Mhm.
Additionally, and then I am very blessed, like, my parents are, have they don't have a ton of money by any means, but they have been
Mhm.
smart with their money always and have been very helpful with paying for my
Mhm.
education and helping as much as they
Mhm.
could. So that was really incredible.
Yeah.
And then the other piece too is a lot of jobs not a lot, but some, my job included, one of the benefits of my now full-time position as a PT is that there is some tuition reimbursement for student loans and that kind of thing. It's small. It's, a
Yeah.
couple $100s a month that they're willing to provide.
Mm-hmm.
But, that is definitely something to consider
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
school
And
is something in your future. Yeah.
yes, so fascinating. I guess like you eventually graduate, you probably had to take a test and become a
Yep.
PT. And when I met you, because I met you through Long Beach Rising, which is a
Yeah.
rock climbing group in Long Beach, you applied to become a yoga teacher there. So did you eventually like graduate, became a PT, and decided like I miss teaching yoga. I want to teach
Yeah,
again. How did yoga kind of slowly come back to your life
totally.
after?
So I think I was in my 3rd year of PT school, or maybe just before the 3rd year of PT school. It's hard to remember
Okay.
exactly. And then COVID happened and things
Yeah.
have been weird since. So,
Uh-huh.
but I think around my 3rd year of PT school, I started taking on some private clients again.
Yoga.
And I yoga private clients, as well as I did take on some personal training private clients as well. And it just sort of reminded me how fun that was and how much I loved that,
Mhm.
as well as I think I was looking ahead a little bit into
Mhm.
what am I gonna do after PT school.
Mhm.
I didn't have a job lined up right away, and, is teaching yoga for a little while something that I'm gonna need to do until I find a job?
Mhm.
And so, as well as I love rock climbing, and if
Mhm.
I could get a free rock climbing membership by
Yeah.
teaching a few classes,
Yeah.
that would be awesome.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, I think that's
Yeah.
that's why I reached out, and I was really
Yeah.
excited. I think even actually, I mean, I was really excited from the moment that Long Beach Rising opened, and I
Yeah.
remember talking to Grayson, like, even when they were doing, like, soft openings
Yeah.
before they even actually had memberships, that, "Hey, like, I'm a yoga teacher and PT, soon to be PT,
Mhm.
and, like, when you get yoga teaching off the ground, like, let me know because I wanna jump in and
Yeah.
be there." So, yeah,
It worked out.
it worked out.
Well, I'm curious. Okay, so how did you said you weren't a huge fan of teaching group, like eventually you weren't that interested in teaching group classes anymore. So tell me why, tell me why and like what it seems like there's something about private and I know and teaching teachers is what you love,
Mhm.
but if something about private teaching is something that brings you more joy or excitement, maybe discuss a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So, I think it was actually teaching at Long Beach Rising.
Mhm.
I started, and I don't take this the wrong way, I started to dread teaching these classes. I think the biggest piece was I work all day. I'm working a full-time job, and my job is kind of chaotic,
Mhm.
and it's very people facing all day long.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
I just was at work for sometimes 9, even 10 hours, and then I'm gonna go to a studio after that and
Mhm.
talk some more to some more people.
Yeah.
Just I really just started to not be happy about doing that, and it was more stressful. Yes, yes, it was more draining than, like, giving me life, and so I just felt like it wasn't the right thing for me,
Mhm.
but I do, yes, so I feel like when I'm one-on-one with someone, it's a little bit easier for me to be present and kind of in the moment with that person and really, looking at their body and seeing what their body is doing and what
Mhm.
can I do to enhance what their body is doing.
Mhm.
Whereas I think at the end of my day, I'm exhausted and I just talked for 9 hours and now I have to go in front of a room of random people and then talk for another hour.
Mhm.
It just wasn't fulfilling
Mhm.
in the way that just talking to one person individually about their body is fulfilling.
Mm-hmm.
And then as
Yeah.
well as teaching teachers, I think too that is for me so far it's been, once every couple months on a
Mm-hmm.
weekend. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's not at the end of my workday, and it
Mm-hmm.
is often a group of people who are really excited to be there and like
Yeah.
eager to learn and have new knowledge and excited, like just excited. And I think that I love that energy, and I love that I can hopefully provide something interesting for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, you have taught workshop for my mentorship and a couple times in the past, and you will coming up teaching again in the future. So I see that you're great at it, but you also love it. I
Mhm.
think that's so important to kind of like follow where it's feeding you, that it's feeding your energy rather than draining your
Yeah,
energy. I think that's just so important for any
exactly.
yoga teachers, but anyone. So I kind of want to go back to where we put a pin on. So some of the injuries that you were starting to have as a yoga teacher when you're teaching full time. I want to know a little bit more about that. And I guess now that you have the knowledge and education as a physical therapist and kind of looking back to those injuries that you were experiencing, and it doesn't have to be only you, maybe some of your students or people were experiencing. Is there anything that you learned in PT now looking back or now looking at yoga teachers or yoga world that you're like something you learned in the PT world that you didn't learn in the yoga world that like could actually help teachers not to get injured or maybe changing the approach of teaching?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a
Yes.
is that a
Yes.
good question?
That is a good question.
Yeah.
So first, I will say the biggest lesson
Uh-huh.
that I had to learn, and I believe it was a yoga teacher that said this to me, but just because you can do something does not mean that you should. And for me in my early 20s as a hypermobile previous athlete dancer,
Mhm.
that was a challenging lesson to learn. Yoga was so intriguing at that point in my life because it truly felt like if I practiced, I could literally put myself in any position that I wanted to. It was incredible. I mean, there for me, the Mysore Ashtanga practice was something that really grabbed my heart early
Mhm.
on in my yoga journey.
Mhm.
I just remember the first time I learned certain poses in primary series and like needing my teacher to help me get into those poses, um and then suddenly like a week later I could do it by myself. And
Mhm.
I was like, "What?" Like I just showed up. Like I didn't do anything special. I just showed up and I just practiced, and now I can do this insane bizarre thing with my body. I just remember thinking that was just so cool, and
Mhm.
it felt so good, until it did not.
Mhm.
I think, I did not know that there was a limit. It felt limitless for a long
Mhm.
time, and then suddenly it was like, "Oh, no, there is a hard limit to how far you can go before you break something or really hurt
Mhm.
yourself in some way."
Mhm.
So, I was often doing Ashtanga every morning and then taking other vinyasa, or sometimes I go to Iyengar classes
Mhm.
that same day as well. I was also a huge bike rider. I biked all over New York City. I was biking
Mhm.
constantly. That was my main form of transportation,
Mhm.
and I was doing way too much, too hard and too fast.
Mhm.
And learning the lesson of just because I could does not mean that
Mhm.
I should,
Mhm.
um, was something that still speaks to me to this day. I really have to constantly hold myself back from overdoing things.
Mhm.
And I think even as a PT, that is a conversation that I have with many of my patients now is, just because you can does not mean that you have to or should.
Mhm.
It is often not the most healthy thing for yourself to be just pushing, pushing, pushing,
Yeah.
especially when people are hypermobile, which I love that that's our next workshop that we're going to talk about
Yes.
because it is something that is very near and dear to my heart. And I think lots of hypermobile people are drawn to yoga
Mhm.
because they're good at yoga then.
Mhm.
When in reality, people who are hypermobile should actually go to the gym and get stronger.
Mhm.
But yeah, did that answer some of your
Yeah,
questions?
I did. And that, it can be a great plug for the upcoming workshop.
Sure.
Definitely people should come for that. And I'm actually very intrigued by hypermobility and taking like short courses on it, learning about it. I don't know
Yes.
if you know, there's a teacher and a PT. She's a PT. Her name is Libby Hinesley, and she's a hypermobile. She's diagnosed with hypermobility syndrome,
Yes.
and she's was a yoga teacher with lots of injuries and had a lot of questions and decided to become a PT.
How funny.
And she's like kind of like spearheading the hypermobility research and education in the yoga world. And she wrote a book called Yoga for Bendy People. And I'm part of her anatomy course that she sends out every month. And so through her, I've kind of learned a lot. And I'm not hypermobile myself, but it's so fascinating because it's not only just how flexible you are, but there's a lot of like gut issues or also like anxiety, or it can show up in so many different ways, not just how flexible the student or the body can be. And I think it's, like you said, it's fascinating because yoga brings a lot of hypermobile people to this practice, and a lot of teachers are hypermobile. I'm tend to be a little bit tighter than most typical yoga teacher who's you tend to be hypermobile. So I've
Sure.
always been the tighter one. And I just remember always thinking like, oh, I wish I could do that, or I wish I could be more, flexible. I used to like idealize that.
Yeah.
But learning more about the hypermobility and how that comes with so much different challenges, and how you have to be mindful about the way you move and how you practice yoga, how you make sure you do strength training. And it has been so fascinating for me to learn. So I'm very, very excited for that workshop. And also coming from, like you said, that topic is very personal to you because you had a lot of, I'm sure, journey and experience in that. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm
Yeah.
very much looking forward to that workshop.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. That kind of like like this in story wise, we're like in this present moment. You're working full time as a PT, and it seems like you get a lot of joy from working privately with people and teaching in teacher training setting or some kind of continuing education setting. So did that come clear for you that you wanted to kind of continue this PT world with, like you said, ideally work part-time PT and do some continuing education for yoga, but that path of PT and then loving to teach yoga teachers about body and anatomy and movement, did that kind of become clear to you recently, like since you've been working as a PT for a while? And was there ever like, I want to go back to teaching yoga more? Like, was there ever, or did you always feel like
No,
this?
I think I've always, anatomy has just always been extremely interesting to me. I love anatomy. And I think actually, I mean, like long term, even PT goal is to teach anatomy in a PT program. Like that would
Mhm.
be the like ultimate dream.
Yeah.
And so I just really enjoy teaching anatomy to people who are excited about learning anatomy, whether that's in a yoga context or in a PT context. I also I think I love anatomy so much that I am, and hopefully, even for the people who show up to teacher training who are not excited about the anatomy day, they're like, oh
Mhm.
crap, I got to do the anatomy session today. I hope that I
Mhm.
can spark just like 1 ounce of interest in anatomy and, bring that love and that joy of anatomy to them
Mm.
in just even the smallest way
Yeah.
because it has been just life-changing for me to start off as a yoga teacher and just fall in love with anatomy and run with it, and if I can bring that for somebody else, that would make me so happy.
Yeah. And did you already have that love of anatomy when you were after 200 hours just teaching yoga as your full-time thing? Like before the PT came into your world, like was anatomy something you always was interested in and loved?
Yeah, I think so. It's so funny. I never, like I said, I didn't really take, like, Science C classes.
Mhm.
Even in high school, I knew I wanted to be an actor, so I didn't really take anatomy classes or biology classes or anything like that. But I remember always just kind of having a knack for remembering body parts and muscles and bones and joints. I remember even in high school, I was at some acting thing, and
Mhm.
one of the teachers was like trying to remember some part of the body or something. And I was like, oh, just the like this.
Mm.
And that happened a couple times that day. And I was like,
Mm.
I don't know how I know that because I don't do science. Um, and I would say my 200-hour anatomy experience was very lackluster.
Mm.
Um, it was like 90 degrees summertime in New York City, and this woman just talked and talked and talked. I don't think she had even like a slideshow presentation.
Yeah, yeah.
It was just like 4 hours straight of some hot room in New York.
Mm.
And I couldn't tell you one word that she said that whole time. Uh, my 500-hour teacher training, however, the anatomy portion was taught by a woman, I believe, named Lily Chandra, and
Mhm.
she was one of the yoga tune-up teachers with Joe
Okay.
Miller.
Yeah.
And she was excellent. She was
Mm.
awesome.
Mhm.
It was such a cool experience, and that, I would say, was what really made me feel like I have a knack for this, and I enjoy this, and I can pick it up, absorb it, and then also use it,
Mm.
in the context of my teaching. And so that was, I think, what really got me interested in the anatomy practice
Yeah.
through yoga. And then after that, I actually did, um, there's a studio in New York that is no longer there as well called Yoga 216, did a 100-hour anatomy teacher training, advanced, um, kind of teacher training module that I participated in.
Mhm.
And Nicole Katz, who ran that program, she's a yoga therapist, certified IAYC or whatever that is.
Yeah.
And she was excellent. And that really kind of solidified that, anatomy is just easy and exciting for me. And I love
Mhm.
it, and I want to just share it with everyone that I can.
Yeah, and you are sharing it now. And you know what I think it's so unique about how you can offer anatomy in the yoga world is that you know both world. You are a PT, you work full time as a PT now, but you used to work full time as a yoga teacher and you've gone through 200 and 500 hour different continuing education for yoga teachers. And I think that like knowing those two world, you can become such a beautiful bridge for I can only think of our perspective as a yoga teacher wanting to learn more about anatomy or body biomechanics. You can speak our language and you can kind
Yeah.
of share the information in a way that is applicable for us and that's going to be useful for us rather than maybe somebody who just are only PT or it could be just somebody who have a PhD in anatomy. Like
Right.
then I can teach the subject in a way that is relatable to us.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think I love that you're passionate about teaching teachers because that makes me excited because I'm like, okay, how when can I bring AJ back for this topic and this topic? And
Totally.
I just I love anatomy as well. And for me, I was a sociology major and I didn't do any biology, nothing like that. But it's getting interested in yoga and taking teacher training and starting to teach. That's what kind of like really made me really interested in anatomy and body. But
Yeah.
what I thought was maybe like a slightly common thread in both of I'm not a PT, but both of us is that like we even though like you said you were in acting school, but you always loved movement. You were dancing, you were playing basketball, you were doing track and spiking. For me too, I always loved movement. Some way to move my body has always been like through line in my life. And I think that is maybe what makes somebody like us so interested in body and how it works.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. So maybe I'm thinking a little bit about just to wrap it up, but I interviewed one yoga teacher on this podcast last year, and she was a yoga teacher, full-time yoga teacher who became a yoga therapist, went through school to become yoga therapy, and then realized that like all that was not enough in terms of what she wanted to do, how she wanted to work with clients, and she went back to school to become a occupational therapist.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
now
Yeah.
she works as an occupational therapist.
Perfect.
And I feel like you have a slightly similar path of you were a yoga teacher, but you realized like you wanted more knowledge and wanted to be able to like work in slightly different ways than 200-hour or 500-hour yoga teacher could, and be going back to school to become PT. So is there any advice you would give to yoga teachers who is maybe they're like it feels like they're a little hesitant or too scared to like start a new career path?
Yes. Man, I think for me, and like I said before, sometimes don't think about it too much and just go for it. And the less you know, the better time you will have with everything. I think if you know, are stressing about doing this and you're doing all this research to figure every last little detail out, it's always going to feel like too scary and too much. And if you just sometimes go for it and just take the leap and make the change, I think that's what worked out for me, I guess. I can't say that I would have the guts to do that again, but at the time that's really ultimately what worked for me. I was like, "Perfect. I'm gonna do this. Let me sign up." And I just went for it.
Yeah, but also it seems like there was like inner push, like inner something in you was like, follow this path or follow this interest, or because not every single yoga teacher decide to go back to school to become a PT.
Right.
So
Yeah.
mhm,
Yeah.
there was like some kind of push within you that kind of brought you to where you are. And I love that what your goal and you have a desire to still be a part of both world of yoga and PT and continue to offer your knowledge and teachings to a yoga world. And I know you also say you would like to teach anatomy for PT school. So it seems like
Yeah.
educator is kind of like in you. You really love educating and teaching. So
Absolutely.
that's very exciting for me to hear. Is there anything that you would like to share or say, or any questions that I didn't get to ask you that you still feel like you want to share to the listeners about this topic?
No, I just think just keep learning. Keep learning
Mhm.
always. I mean, I am forever pursuing new knowledge and growth and just don't stop learning. And I love that, you, Rika, have this platform for mentorship for yoga teachers. I think that's so fantastic. I mean, I wish that was something that was available when I was a, new yoga teacher. So I think that's such a incredible thing that you do. And I would just encourage everyone to find mentors and seek out new learning opportunities and don't be afraid to ask questions. I think there's so many people out there who are willing to provide learning opportunities, and it doesn't always have to be go back to school and spend tens of thousands of dollars to learn all this stuff. I think there's a lot of resources out there nowadays that are not tens of thousands of dollars, and you can learn just as much right from the source.
Yes.
So keep searching, keep reaching out to people, and keep learning.
Yeah, I love that. That's such a great advice. It just came to me a couple of people I interviewed on the podcast too. Like they are not necessarily a PT, but they had a mentor who were PT and they
Yeah,
learned so much from them and how that made them become like such an amazing private yoga teacher and things like that. So that's a great tip of just like don't be afraid to ask.
yeah.
And continue learning. Well, thank you so much, AJ. This has been such a great conversation, and I'm so glad I got to learn about your journey and what brought you to where you are today. And is there do you want to share anything about how our listeners can find you or reach out to you if they want to find you and ask questions?
I'm not terribly active on Instagram, but you can totally find me there. I think I'm aj.wg.pt, and that's it.
Okay.
And maybe, Reiki, you could also post my email address.
Yeah.
But that would probably be a good, easy way for people to reach out to me as well.
Okay. We'll put all of that on the show notes, and all the listeners can keep their ears open for the next upcoming continuing education workshop that you will be teaching in November, early November.
Yes.
You're coming back to teach about hypermobility, and that'll be in person, but also we'll live stream in for anybody who lives outside of local Long Beach area. So super excited for that. And also I'm so thankful for your time that you came on to chat with me today. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for listening to the conversation I had with AJ. I hope this conversation was interesting to you. I am always so fascinated by physical therapists, and I just feel like I have so much that I can learn from them. So it was such a pleasure to have AJ on as a guest on the podcast this week. Because I was so excited to share with you about AJ, I forgot to do a little check-in in the beginning of the podcast. So I want to say that I just completed a 3-day training weekend with my teacher, Annie Carpenter. She came to Los Angeles Center for Yoga, and I got to meet some of her amazing community and students that I haven't met in person before or I haven't seen in a long time, but we get to see each other during this kind of big training that happens in LA. So that was really fun for me to spend time with such an amazing community of yoga teachers that we get to learn alongside each other. So it was such a great weekend, and I feel like my heart is so full. So thank you so much, Annie, as well as thank you so much for that community. And if you really enjoyed this week's podcast or this podcast in general, please subscribe or like or star or anything like that you can do on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast from. But most importantly, what matters the most is if you could share this podcast or share this episode with somebody you know who also might enjoy this kind of podcast. It means a lot to me. If you want to reach out to me, my Instagram is Reika Yoga, ReikaYoga, and my website is www.reikayoga.com. You are always welcome to message me anytime about the podcast or questions or feedback or comments. I love hearing from the listeners. So that is it for me today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and speak to you next week.